Good morning, everybody. If you had been in London on this date, May the 1st, in 1851, during the reign of Queen Victoria, you would have sensed a big rush of excitement in the city. Well, why? Because people were going to visit the Great Exhibition, which opened on May the 1st. According to some, the first World's Fair. On the left is Queen Victoria. On the right, her husband, Prince Albert. And it was Albert who thought up the Great Exhibition and was one of the driving forces behind it. He loved science and technology and being modern. So when it opened on May 1 in 1851, people were awed by the building it was in, called the Crystal Palace. Just a marvel of engineering and building, and in the 5.5 months the exhibition was open, over 6 million people visited it. Many Americans visited it too. And one guy who really benefited from people traveling to London was Thomas Cook. He had a young travel agency, and this really gave a boost to his company, and the Thomas Cook Company's still around today. It was so popular that it made money, and with the profits, the British built 3 museums, including this one, the Natural History Museum, and established a scholarship which is still being used today. So the Victorian era stands for lots of things to lots of people, but I think most agree its focus on science and technology and the empire. All of these come together in the Great Exhibition. Now, Albert Hall in the background was built after Albert died to commemorate him. And here's a statue to the Great Exhibition with him on top. So it was really kind of his thing. So what did you see when you went to the Great Exhibition? Well, lots of machinery from Britain, from the continent, from the New World, from the colonies. People were fascinated by big machines and what they could do. The Minton Tile Company makes tiles. This is a display in New York City in Central Park. But the Minton tile display at the Great Exhibition just overawed people, and it was 10 years later that Minton tiles were used in the floor of our own Capitol building. Also on display were images of the empire. For instance, this crown, which would be worn by the Queen. The diamond at the top is the Kohinoor diamond, which is kind of a controversial diamond because the people of India and Pakistan want it back, and the Brits won't give it to them, but that's another story for another time. Now here's Matthew Brady. We know him from Civil War photography. This is 10 years before the Civil War, and he was displaying his kind of camera equipment and won a medal. Now if you needed to go to the bathroom, you could use a pay toilet. They cost a penny, and spend a penny meant go to the bathroom. And here's one of the pay toilets that was excavated in the Hyde Park part of London where the Great Exhibition was. Samuel Colt was another American there displaying the firearms that he was working on. And this telescope, where the telescope itself was British, but the mount was German, was one way people showed that fairs are about international cooperation. You could buy a ticket. The railroads were selling them at a discount to get people to use the railroads. You could get season tickets, day tickets, kind of like getting tickets today. And a big souvenir was a stereoscopic picture that, if you look through 2 lenses, it sort of brought the 2 images together into one. People really like that. Well, we had a World's Fair a few years later in New York City, and we also had something like the Crystal Palace, and that became kind of the look and feel of the World's Fairs in the 1800s and 1900s, a big building. And when the French had their World's Fair in 1889, on the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution, they showcased the Eiffel Tower, which was only supposed to be temporary, but it's still there. And so was the Space Needle in Seattle from the Seattle World's Fair of 1962. So we're reminded that for a long, long time, the World's Fairs really captured the imagination of the worldwide public.